Leadership has a cost, and most people don't find out what it is until they're already responsible for people. Welcome to Authentic Encounters, Lena Speaks, the podcast for leaders who want real conversations, not polished advice. I'm Lena Morris, founder and CEO of Authentic Encounters, where we take organizations from training to transformation by developing leader behavior, communication, and culture. This week's episode is titled The Part of Leadership No One Really Told Us About. My guest is Landis Archey, father, coach, and in-school instructional support leader, someone who has led in the schools, churches, and community spaces for years. In this conversation about what leadership really requires, staying composed when you're being tested, and knowing your why and your non-negotiables, understanding that proximity makes leaders more human, and why growth, faith, and emotional maturity matter more than titles. If you've ever felt the weight of leadership or the pressure to please everyone, this will meet you where you are. Let's get into it. All right, welcome. We are super excited to invite Landis Archey here. So we're excited to have this conversation and talk about the part of leadership no one really told us about. I invited you to Authentic Encounters, Lena Speaks, because this podcast, we really talk about leadership, but not only in the areas of the professional mainstream world. We are all leaders. We are all influencing somebody, and that leadership usually happens across various environments and various relationships. I got to know you many, many years ago through a mutual friend. You started supporting and helping us lead a multicultural worship team at a Northside, predominantly white church in the city of Indianapolis, Indiana. You always had great leadership qualities. What I've noticed about you and your beautiful wife is that you guys lead with a level of excellence, a level of humility, and a level of leadership that you influence a lot of people in a lot of areas. Your impact has a common thread throughout it. But what I'd really like to know, and the reason why I invited you on, is for you to just give us a boots on the ground lens of what leadership is and what are all the things you learned about leadership throughout those various roles that nobody really ever taught you about, but you're being able to model it so well throughout these years that I've known you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I want to say that first. And this is just an amazing platform to just talk about many different things. So I'm grateful and take it as an honor to be on here with you. And thank you. You've done a lot of great things throughout the years. As it comes to leadership, I want to say my path has been just trial and error. I'm just trying to get information, learning, and then being a father, a husband, a father, learning different things as it goes. I think as you get older, you get better and you guard yourself differently as you move on with leadership. I think leaders are they're born and they can be built. I think everybody's path is different. Just for years, I've always ended up leading something. Regardless if I did not want to be in front, at some point I always ended up in front. If it was the youth choir, from any type of sports event, just any type of thing like that. So I think leading, my father's was a pastor, Baptist pastor. My mom always was leading. My grandfather was leading. I had family members that always led in some capacity. So I just think it was kind of in my DNA and how I was made.
I love it. Key thing you said, leaders are born and built. I like that because the reality is at some point in time, you'll get to leadership, and whether you're born or whether it's built, you can be effective or non-effective. I have observed you being a very effective leader, even as I would like to say, like we said, we were younger then, right? But leadership knows no age. So talk to me about the part of leadership that is natural to you, the part that you said it was built. You had all these examples of the people that you were able to watch growing up, your father and the people in your life that modeled leadership. That's the point I think that is born. That's like that was in your DNA. Talk to me about the born pieces. Yes, go ahead. What were you
I
going to
think the
say?
born pieces, and it's funny you said when you did mention my father, I didn't grow up with my father in my life, right? But when I say it's in your DNA, just because sometimes you didn't see it, some things are just in you based off of who birthed you. Does that make
Yes.
sense in a way?
Yes.
So a lot of things that I did not know about my pops at first, we have a relationship now, but
Yeah.
you would think I grew up with him all my life. So that's always interesting. I always see my grandfather lead choirs. I had an uncle,
Yeah.
Clarence Gowdy and Senior. They led choirs. My mom was always a leader. And then just her being, I think she was the biggest example, the first example of just how to lead or stand on your own because she was a single mom, taking care of two kids, so she had to stand on, as the kids say, stand on business. She always had to stand on, just making things happen. Leaders make
Yeah.
things happen. Don't sit up with a lot of complaining. I'm sure you have your days
Yes.
where things can be kind of tough, but you don't let those days run you. You still
Right.
push forward. You're always, helping. My mom was always helping or just being in front of people doing a lot of different things, even if it was church admin stuff. I remember this is back in the day when they would make bulletins and they had the little thing they had to turn the little thing and put the ink in. She was doing things like that early at night. I mean, it was just those types of examples were in front of me all the time. So being in front somewhat came naturally. I think being in front when I started singing a little bit more from school talent shows and things like that, and we'd start. I had a middle school band that kind of copied a like a Jodeci or something like that back in the day. I ended up leading in that. We had all young people playing the instruments, and it was two of us that sang, but it was just always moved in some type of leadership in those areas. Whatever I did, it always came from the examples I had from
Yeah.
just my family, my grandfathers, my uncles, and my mom.
And I see that same leadership now multiplied in your kids. Natural leaders, Malachi, natural hustler. He's a leader, go
Yes.
getter. Does that make sense? Go
Yes,
getter.
yes.
I mean, pretty much all of your kids are. And, that's that legacy that you're passing on. That's the stuff that was born in you. Now let's talk about the stuff that was built, the parts of leadership that you like, man, some of my official training came from this. The stuff that I didn't intuitively have, the people who honestly took me alongside them and told me a leader is this. Where did that level of humility come from? You had that level of authority, humble humility, but it's powerful and it transcends race, class, and power. But what I've seen with you when our paths have intersected is people across race, class, and power seem to really ask for your level of leadership. So, talk to me about how that leadership was then built.
Well, I think it's more God's path than anything. You talk about God to give you everything you need. He definitely gets all the credit when it comes to this. So early on, I used to work at a school. This is when my kids were pretty young, and we're off in the summertime. So I had the church I was working at also. They did a summer enrichment camp. So I would be a part of the youth, one of the youth counselors, helping running the camp and things like that. But even let me rewind back. I went too far ahead of myself. Where I met my wife was in the Flanner House youth group,
Okay.
and we had a youth choir. And actually went to my wife's church. That's a whole nother story. But we went to my wife's church and we sang and we met afterwards and stuff like that. But there's a guy by the name of Randy Sargent that is very, very instrumental in my leadership skills. He actually took all the kids in our neighborhood, started a youth group, and took us all to Kings Island for, I think it was like $25 in a 15-passenger van. And it
Yeah.
went from there. I was one of the leaders in there, and a lot of things we did for just the kids in our age. We started working at Community Action. My first job was at Community Action that was connected to our youth group under Randy Sargent. And it just kind of went from there. And just learning and watching him and relieve and remove the cool. That's what he would say a lot of times. Because sometimes leaders have to step in places and do things before everybody else will. The followers jump in once they feel comfortable, but a leader moves into space that might not be comfortable, but he just pushes in there and pull the people in. So that was
Yeah.
one of the first big lessons, just seeing what the leader's all about, just stepping out and doing different things. After that, we started doing the enrichment camp through Second Baptist. It is Purpose of Life now. And something happened where the person that was running the actual camp was removed. Now here I am in my early 20s, and now I'm finishing out the camp and doing a lot of things. And some of the parents were upset with me. I actually had a lady tell me to my face, "You're gonna mess up. And when you mess up, Imma talk about you, and Imma let people know that you mess up." And I had to keep it together during that time, right? Because being a leader, sometimes I can't just speak and say whatever I wanna say, getting
Yeah.
angry or mad. You have to be composed at all times, because sometimes it could be a setup for your downfall. As a leader, you have to be in so many different spaces and wear so many hats at so many different times. Not saying it's
Yeah.
not a time that you can't be tactful, but
Yeah.
that was one of my first real big lessons as a leader, because she was trying to push me to do something to where I could lose my credibility
Yeah.
and be removed from this position that I really enjoy, working with kids. So
Yeah.
that was one of the bumpy roads of things. And then just doing choirs, doing music ministry has always been the biggest passion. I've always wanted to do it full time. It's just something I've always been passionate about doing. But with that, you're dealing with a lot of people, right? So
Yes.
there's different personalities. Usually the choir is always in a church has the most people to deal with. So I'm
Yeah.
dealing with tons of different personalities, and that has its challenges in itself. And then learning how to be more personable. I like people, but sometimes people can get on your nerves, and I would be more standoffish, where I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to deal with people. But
Yeah.
understand, as a leader, you have to be being able to be touched or talk to, you know what I'm saying? Just
Yes.
so that was the biggest training ground. Choirs, music ministry, dealing with a lot of different personalities, how to bring them all together.
Yes. That's good. So when I see you, there's a level of, like I say, diversity that's in there with you. So you don't just do African American choirs. Like when you met
Right.
me when we were doing East 91st Street Christian Church, we were actually doing a diverse choir, right? We were a
Yes,
praise
yes.
team. And I do remember when my father passed and you came and you sang for the funeral. But when the funeral was over, he was like, "Lena," he's like, "only you will have a Baptist preacher, a Pentecostal preacher, and then the Nation of Islam somehow all involved." And I will tell you this, this is why our lives intersect really well, even with your wife, because we all are called to just kind of be those bridges to help people see the lens and the fullness of what I like to say Christ and the fullness of community through the lens of other people. You get invited to so many diverse places and things of that nature. You also get to lead different youth and support them. Tell us a little bit more about the professional side of that, what that looks like. And listen, Landis, we're just gonna be honest. You a tall, big dude. Like you could be intimidating. You know what I'm saying? How do you have? How do you allow yourself to have impact and be a great leader that people trust and feel safe with, not only at church but in the community and also in the school systems?
Just like anything, I think trust is built through
Mhm.
time, through relationship. In the school, it's funny. You said big intimidating guy. I started out in the special needs department at North Central,
Yeah.
and time there just kind of ended. And then I got the job at Pike, kind of was doing the same thing, and then I was asked to be moved to the in-school suspension part of the school in freshman center. And sometimes a job like that. Pike is doing an amazing job. The new principal there is an amazing brother, doing a great job. African American brother doing a great job changing the whole environment of the school.
Yeah.
There's very inspiring, Mr. Willard. And then sometimes I just deal with more of just the troubled kids a lot of times.
Yeah.
So just learning how to de-escalate a lot of their situations, problems. Kids comes from different backgrounds. Some kids just come so they can get lunch or their breakfast and things. So
Yeah.
just navigating, listening and watching, being understanding because it might not be my situation, but if you listen, create relationship, you can help that kid through that day, that week, that year, maybe say something that might spark anything. And I've had kids come back because I only deal with the freshmen, but I've had, juniors and seniors come back. Oh, Mr. Archie, I remember when you said da 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 or this and that really helped me. I remember this. Just being, whatever light you can be nowadays. I think that's the point in the school for the most
Yeah.
part, and just being a advocate where I can, especially a male. A lot of
Yes.
kids come from homes without males, and I can really relate with to that.
Mhm.
Again, when I talk about my pops really wasn't in my life, and then we began to get a relationship in 2000 after my daughter was born, my first child, and we have a great relationship now, but just understanding where a kid might be and how they might look up to you and just trying to be relatable. Not always being, getting on a kid because it's already a tough room anyway to be in, but,
Yes.
letting the kid, again, de-escalate, letting him find some space, and then start creating relationship, comfortability, talking with a kid, trying to encourage them to get work done a lot of times. I'll see kids sometimes in the room I'm in that have a large amount of missing assignments. So just
Mhm.
trying to get a kid to be motivated in a
Mhm.
space and to understand their future. A lot of kids come
Mhm.
in and don't understand future. So we're trying to get them locked in on not just the now, but the future. And
Yeah.
nowadays with education, there are so many avenues a kid can go in, from barbering to HVAC. You can learn these things in high school and then move
Yeah.
on to a career that's right out of high school. If it's college is not for everybody, but
Right.
just trying to get kids to understand, your parents are paying for those Balencianos or whatever those different kind of shoes kids is wearing now, more expensive than I wear,
Yeah.
but you like that type of lifestyle. So how do I keep that lifestyle when I graduate, or what
Mhm.
career paths can I take? Just trying to get kids to think differently after coming from middle school. Some of them are maturing, some of them have not
Mhm.
matured. So there's just a big process.
So listen, I heard you talk about maturing, where you meeting them where they're at. Now, I'm going to say something that's probably a little controversial, but I deal with leaders too. And oftentimes you get in leadership situations, even in the workplace or even in the community, whatever. So you're looking at people like, listen, you a 40 some odd person. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
You should know better. And they don't. And sometimes I hate to say it, whether it's in the workspace, in the church choir, or at school, there's a lot of similarities to the lack of discipline
Oh, yes.
and the lack of emotional intelligence, whether it's a person in the choir, a grown person in the choir, or whether it's somebody, a young adult or a
Mhm.
teenager at school. Like, what are those leadership lessons you share, regardless of the age? What are your main things? Like, I like to share this with people as it relates to leadership, people that are following me, regardless of their age, because you said it, it really isn't about age, it's about maturity. And you said that word, right? Because I just remember I was sitting somewhere and I was like, this is a 40 some odd person. And then finally it hit me. I'm like, 40 don't mean mature. Age,
It
I hate to
doesn't.
say it. R. Kelly said it. Age ain't nothing but a number. But so talk to me. What leadership lessons do you share, regardless of age and regardless of maturity?
Mm. You know, um, your why. I think that's the
Yeah,
biggest thing, like knowing my why and
yeah,
how I'm built. So I'm not gonna do anything outside of who Landis is. I'm always gonna stay genuine to me. I'm not gonna try to, oh, I see how they do it. I'm not gonna try to change me. For example, a lot of kids in the school didn't know I sing. I
mhm,
was able to participate in the Black History program that they had at the school. And so now they're putting in more pieces to, like, oh, Mr. Archie, da, 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 all those different things. So I'm always playing music in the room. Most times it's some type of gospel music or gospel rap or something like that. Or sometimes it gets kind of churchy in my room. I ain't gonna lie. I'm just gonna be me. And I think
yeah,
being a Christian sometimes we'll change to the world more, not breaking anything, but just try to be more on that. And I just try to stay in the lane that who I
yes,
am, how I act, keep those same things, even when I'm coaching.
yes,
When I coach, we don't cuss. Some
mhm,
coaches cuss, I don't. And I'll
mhm,
hear players cuss. They might cuss at home. Hey, we don't do that here. You're gonna run if you cuss again, watching language.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm me all the time. So I think if
Yes.
you know your why and you have your
Mhm.
non-negotiables of how you're
Yes.
built, because the people that are going to be gravitating to you, they're going to gravitate to who you are, not
Yes.
a copy of something that you're not. Because they'll know the
Yes.
fake you and they'll know the real you.
Absolutely. And that's what I like about authentic encounters, right? That's why I started it because people know who
Mm,
I am, the good, the bad, the ugly. And that's what people are looking for in a world nowadays and time that has a lot of filters and people only post the positive and you get things for
absolutely.
likes. You know what I'm saying? It is those
Mhm.
authentic leaders and people that influence authentically, even through their flaws, that people are, following them. Which leads me into this. Talk to me about how that shows up as a father and a husband. I personally love your kids. They comedy though. I ain't gonna lie. You know what I'm saying? When you talk about who they are, I love them. They are individuals and they are unique. And that is something I can honestly say that you and your wife has instilled in them. And they're out here making impact in their own diverse individual ways, all three of them, right? So talk to me though about how your leadership, your ability to stay who you're called to be, not only as their father, but sometimes you've been their coach. So talk to me about that.
Woo! Well, now there's a lot
Ah,
of trial and error in that also. I will say something you had just said, it's not just always perfect in this path of leadership. You're going to make
yeah.
mistakes. And I just, especially in fatherhood, and you want your kids to be the best and a better version of you. I mean, I
Yes.
definitely wanted that for my children, but it's always evolving. My oldest got a different coach, then my son got a coach
Yeah.
that from dad, and that was a little bit different because he was a boy too. So, and
Yeah.
then my youngest got the package of both of those two coaches the other two had, and it was a different kind of coach dad with them. And then coaching girls
Yes.
is a little different too. But
Yeah.
I was so used to a more to for lack of words, a more Bobby Knight kind of style of coaching. So kind of and kids are built different than how we were built. So I had to be more
Yeah.
uh a Zen master like Phil Jackson sometimes and reach kids at different areas. Now we did work hard, and
Yeah.
sometimes I did push them probably past the limit of where they wanted. But I still see, and they might not say this now, but I still see the work ethic in
Yeah.
the other things they do. Um,
Mhm.
Kyla at her job, Malachi and the things he does, and definitely in Trend and things that they do. I mean, we were in the gym 24/7. I'm like, hey, what kids have to do? So we were always in somebody's gym. In the
Yeah.
summertime, I was getting them up early in the morning. We were going to the gym because that was the only time we could get the space for the gym to ourselves. It was summertime. Let's get up and take advantage of the time. Kids want to just sit on their phones and stuff all day anyway.
Yeah.
And so I see it, even though most times they talk about me, they're like, "Oh, Dad, you had us working so hard." You do, but I sit back and I watch them work hard in their everyday lives and things like that. Where I see some kids are just lazy in general, and I can say this honestly, I don't really have lazy kids.
No,
They
you
have
don't.
their moments where they're tired, but they get after it. If they know what they
Mhm.
want, most of my kids work multiple jobs and go after the things they want. So it had its pros and cons with that. I think the biggest challenge was I think that's why it's important sometimes you know who your mate is, who you
Yeah.
marry, because a lot of times when I was at church, I had to be gone and my wife had to step in a lot of times and be that leader also. And now she
Mhm.
watched more basketball than me. She wasn't even a
She does.
basketball person. Yes, I'm ready to turn it off sometimes,
Yeah.
but especially after the season. But then just balancing that.
Yes.
And I spend a lot of times with my kids. It is very disturbing sometimes the amount of time people don't spend with their kids. My wife and I were very determined to really be in our kids' lives in a different way. Not saying we got it right all the time, but we
Right.
did have a what we wanted to model and where we wanted to take our kids.
Yes. And I can honestly say from the outside looking in and been very close proximity to see that what you produced in your children, their impact, the leadership that they're having in their various lanes is really what I saw how you led them. There's no gap.
Mhm.
You're not feeding yourself lies. I will tell you, the investment you can tell is paying off. Success leaves clues. You've heard that before. And so your
That's
kids are
good.
those living clues. So I really appreciate your level of leadership with the choirs and with worship. Like you can tell that you are gifted and created for that. Talk to me about where you're at in this stage of your life. Your kids are adults. Your wife is off doing great things. Now she's in school, running things, at the
Hmm.
hospital and things of that nature. So now talk to me about how worship and leadership looks different for you now at this stage of your life, at this stage of your ministry and career.
Well, one, I would say worship's all about relationship, right, with Christ.
Yes.
So my as we lead people, we're trying to take some people where I've been privately. And then the ones that are singing with me to understand their why. I know I said that earlier, but it's all about the why when we come together. We come together as believers to worship Christ. I'm getting older, been at a lot of different ministries. Thank God I've never been fired out of ministry, but God has given me a different type of path. We have to keep the main thing when we go to church. Here's one of those moments where you learn. I remember my mom, when we would always go to church, and my mom has a big voice, great soprano back in the day.
Yeah.
And she was like, ain't nobody gonna stop my prayer. I'm gonna pray. If nobody's saying that, I'm gonna say something. That was just her mentality. And I think
Yeah.
we have to have that mentality when we go into a worship service. But I'm getting to the point now where all the other fluff, all the things that don't have anything to do with Christ, they kind of ugh, bother me a little bit because we
Yes.
remove ourselves from the main thing. And I think
Mhm.
when we keep everything more Christ centered, we can
Yes.
see more influence, we can see more power in our services. People can sense God more than just a routine thing. And sometimes
Yes.
it might not be a service with a lot of emotions and things. Like sometimes God is quiet and still, but you still know him to be there, or
Mhm.
yeah, know him to be in the room without a lot of extra fluff.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes since I know my why and I know what I believe in, it's hard sometimes for me to understand other little things in services. But I went through a space about once COVID happened. I was real blessed.
Yeah.
Most people said, "Oh, I didn't have a job. I didn't have." God really blessed me to actually work a, a lot during COVID because people were recording services.
Good.
And I was able to just go into a service. I understood the assignment. They were just there to worship. And
Yeah.
so God really began to strengthen me in that path of just, hey, when we come in, this is what we're doing. We're not worried about what sister such and such got on, what happened. We are focusing in on God. And as worship leaders, you have lives and things go on. There's been times where probably Talisha and I have probably had some kind of argument the night before, or sometimes right before I close the door going into the church, and you have to lock in, right?
Mm.
Because that's what leaders do.
Mhm.
But I just think that's the biggest thing, like especially with church, with so many different personalities and people you deal with. We're still here to worship God at the end of the day. I know you got
Yeah.
this dealing with, but God is bigger than that. Let's lock in on him.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. And I like that you said that. Like as leaders, when you say we're here to lock in, right? And that's what I often tell leaders. They'll say, "Well, I don't have this, or this happened right before I came in here." The reality is leadership isn't about me. It's about the people
It
we're leading. Right.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
leadership is an elevated spot. So I tell people it's not cheap. If you say yes to leadership and you say yes to that position, you understand a different level of integrity, a different level of maturity and responsibility and accountability come with that level, right? So,
Mhm,
I'm not really big into sports. People laugh all the time, but I do know the greatest ones have good coaches. They put a game plan and they stay focused so they can get to the championship, you know? So, what are some things, if you go back to that younger 20 you, which, hey, kudos to you for not popping off in 20. Listen, I'm 50 now, and there's still days I'd be like, let me stay in the house because mine might pop off. Ain't no telling what. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes my mouth is a little saucy, and it's really authentic. But anyway, I digress. Thinking back to when you were 20 and all of the different phases, opposition that has come up with you, whether it was running a camp, raising your kids at the school, what you're dealing with. What are the leadership lessons you would say, hey, I wish somebody would have told me about this before I said yes to leadership? Or not even before I said yes, because sometimes you just walk in leadership. It's the natural essence of who you are. And you just, find yourself in those situations where you're required to lead. Hey, I really wish somebody would have told me this about leadership before I got here.
It cost. It costs to be a leader, because again, everybody might be going one direction. You have to stay focused
Yes.
on, the direction you need to go. Have a
Yes.
plan. One of my favorite books in leadership is Thinking for a Change by John Maxwell. That
Okay.
that book really, like, changed my life. It's
Okay.
one of his first books on leadership and just downloading a lot of information, being around other great leaders, and knowing the transparency of being around other leaders or being around when you're in the close inner circle of people, not putting people on pedestals, right? I think
Yes.
that's the dangerous thing. Sometimes we want to make people perfect, but
Yes.
nobody's perfect, and everybody has something they are challenged with,
Yes.
that they deal with. And the closer you are to someone, the more you're going to see about them or who they are. I was just telling my daughter was dealing with some things, and I was just talking to her the other day, and I said, the reason why you see things because you're closer. It doesn't
Yes.
mean that though they're bad people, it's just
Mhm.
you're closer. For example, you live with me most of your life. There's things you know about me that no one else is gonna know about because you're my child and we grew up in the house together. You're gonna know certain things that other people will
Yes.
never, ever know. So the
Yes.
closer you are to leaders, I think you have to have a way to filter
Mhm.
certain things. I'm not saying don't do anything outside of your character and your integrity, but just understand you're dealing with a human being.
Yes.
Because I think that I early in, I put people on certain pedestals, and then when they failed me, it affected me in a way where, I almost lost my path of where I should go. I got off my path because I was like, "Well, if they're acting like this, I don't even care," and that was the wrong, mindset, and it was more, now at almost 50, I
Yes.
understand that, hey, it's about getting in my word, learning more about Christ so I can have the tools and the understanding I need to deal with those valley experiences. Like valley
Yes.
experiences don't you haven't everybody has valley experiences, but how I
Right.
deal with it, will let me know if I'm gonna go through it or stay right there,
Yes.
if that makes sense.
Yes. It does make sense, and it's so funny that you would say that because I was just teaching a class last week on, speaking to some leaders last week on change management. And when you start the process of change management, you could go all the way all the way down to the valley of despair. But you said something very key, making sure you have the tools and the resources. I often tell people, if you don't want to go to the valley of despair when you're going through transition and change, take the tools and the resources. Build a bridge so you can divert from that. So, like,
Absolutely.
yes, reading that book by John Maxwell, great leader, great foundational points that he has for leadership. John Maxwell, so key. And you're absolutely right. Proximity. That's another thing, though, that others should understand. As a leader, you probably can't have everybody around you either. You
You
probably
can't.
need to understand, I need to have people around me, be intentional about having people around me that can handle the flawed me and understand that I'm still walking in my calling and I'm still obedient.
Well, what does the
That's
word
the
say? Bad
intention.
company corrupts good behavior.
Yes.
And so those are things that are stitched in me, not s and those
Yes.
because you're gonna deal with people that are of the world, people that are not saved, people that are saved, but you
Hmm.
do have to be selective of who you have around you,
Yes.
um, as you move forward in life.
Yes.
There are people
Absolutely.
now that I have had to start removing, and they're just great friends. I love them,
Mhm.
but they're not good for the progress of where I'm trying to go and where I'm trying to
Yes.
finish out. We have different
Yes.
mindsets, and once those things happen, you can still talk to them from time to time, but they cannot
Mhm.
be in your inner circle.
Yes, that's true. As you continue to grow, there's this saying that they say, everybody can't be in your front row. Everybody can't
Mm.
be in your front row. Everybody can't handle. You know, the good thing about leadership, I tell people all the time, is the level of impact that we get to have on other people, the positive, effective impact that we get to have on other people. But as you begin to grow and influence, like I've seen this happen with you begin to grow and influence, different people begin to ask for you. I've seen opposition come up. You know what I'm saying? I've seen people try to tarnish your name and things of that nature. One thing I often tell leaders, 1 minute you're a superstar, at the same time, you're somebody's target. How do you handle the weight of that?
Jay Z says, first they love you, then they hate you, then they love you again. But
Yeah.
again, I just think it's just part of the process. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, everybody's not gonna like you. I
Right.
think sometimes as leaders, we want everybody to like us, but there are just some
Yes.
people we just don't vibe with, and that's okay. You can still
Yes.
love them where they are and just keep it pushing. But
Yeah.
sometimes I wanted to be a people pleaser at one time, like, oh, they don't like, and then I put so much in a person when I have all these other people that we're using influence on, or they're a part of the solution of where I want to go or what we're trying
Yeah.
to accomplish. So,
Hmm.
just be okay with that. Because it's impossible to please everybody with all the different personalities that we deal with as leaders. It's never, ever, ever going to happen where everybody's happy at the same time. And there might be some moments where that happens, but there'll be more moments where everybody's not, in my opinion, I think there'll be more
Yes.
moments where everybody's not going to like you versus the other way.
Yeah. Good. So, Landis, listen, our time has flown by really quickly here.
Oh my God, that
Um,
was fast.
it was fast, but listen, I want to leave you to, kind of share your heart with people that are listening, whether they're in the professional environment of work, whether that's the office, school hallways, administration, whatever, whether they're coaching on the sidelines and supporting, or whether they're leading their homes. What would you like to leave with those that are watching this podcast?
Keep growing. Definitely always keep growing. Always try to learn something new, at least every year, twice a year, and keep making impact. I
Yeah.
think, regardless of the age, you can, if you're a leader, you're going to lead in whatever door opens for you. You're going to
Mhm.
lead in that space. Just keep pushing through the good, through the bad. Keep pushing.
Good. Yes, I like that. Keep pushing. So, uh, we've talked about a number of things today about things we wish people would have told us about leadership. But bottom line is to know your why, right? And to make impact. That is so needed in today's world. And we talked about the faith component as well. We don't know everybody's faith who's looking at this. We are Christians and we serve Christ. But I'm telling you, you can't get through this with just the tactical skills and resources. Every day, the way the world is going now and the weight of what's happening in our world, if we're going to go out and make authentic encounters with people and we're going to lead with impact, we need some help. And it's not only the natural tools, we need some spiritual guidance. We need faith. We need to be restored from time to time because we're dealing with humans. We hope you enjoyed the things that we talked about today about things we wish we knew about leadership. And thank you and have a great day.
Thanks again, Lena.
Yeah. Before I go, I want to land this episode with one sentence Landis said, and I hope you don't forget. Leadership has a cost. And that cost often is composure, maturity, and discipline to stay aligned with your why, especially when pressures, personalities, or opposition show up. If this conversation challenged you, here's what I need you to do for the week. Write down your non negotiables. How do you communicate? How do you stay grounded? And how do you lead when you're tired? Because people don't follow perfection. They follow leaders who are real and consistent. If you want to go deeper, check the show notes for ways to stay connected with me and Landis. And if you're a team and you know that you need more development opportunities that actually change behavior, not just offer motivation, connect with Authentic Encounters. I'm Lena Morris, and this is Authentic Encounters. Lena Speaks. Keep growing, keep pushing, and lead with impact.